Collective Awakening podcast,
sharing truth and knowledge in this time of conscious awakening
with Chris and Stephen. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Collective Awakening podcast, episode 99. Can you believe it? And myself and Stephen have put together some of the highlights, some of our interviews and people that we've connected with over the past 5 years. It's been absolutely amazing. This podcast really was never meant to be a podcast. We started it in 2020 as a way of connecting with our wider audience, sharing information and connecting with people. And we really just connected dots from there. Connected with some great people from around the world, and it became a podcast very quickly. And we're really privileged to have had some wonderful guests that have shared their time with us. And we really want to say thank you, and also thank you to all of you who have supported this podcast. And really, always our sole purpose is to share that knowledge, that spiritual wisdom, experiences and journeys that you can resonate with, and perhaps also inspire you on your journey. So I hope you enjoy these highlights of the past 5 years. Please join us on Wednesday, the 20th of August, when we're going to celebrate our 100th episode with a special live episode that will be broadcast on YouTube and also on our Facebook page as well. That'll start 6 o'clock UK time, and we'll be welcoming back some guests, and we'll be having some interactive talks. It'll be an amazing evening. So please join us live, but enjoy for the time being these highlights from the past 5 years. David, good afternoon.
Hello, chaps.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us.
You just mentioned, though, beforehand that I found out just before this started that you live in Fleetwood and you don't know the manager of Fleetwood Town.
Oh.
You don't know anything about football. You watch them.
Yeah, but it's a great pleasure. We just want to welcome all our friends who are going to join us in what's sure to be a very interesting and awakening hour. So, David, what I'd like to speak of first of all, a lot of our friends and myself and Stephen would call this a great time of collective awakening, a great opportunity for real change, and something we feel in the spiritual movement that's been coming a long time. We've talked about it, we've felt it, and now here it is. So I'd just like to hear from you your view on what is happening right now, what is occurring right now in the world.
Well, it's a time of great danger, and it's a time of great opportunity. And whether we go down the road of danger and let them finish the job, or the road of opportunity is our choice. It's always a choice. You know, what we call a human life is simply choice and consequence, choice and consequence, choice and consequence, constantly. You make choices, you get consequences. Good consequences, bad consequences at other times. And you hope that you learn from the bad consequences so you don't make them again, or you don't create them again. And then you make different choices as a result. It's called learning from experience. Ultimately, there are great chunks of the human race who don't learn from experience. They just repeat the same choices and thus get the same consequences. That great line, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. And what humanity has done, going way back into history, is to give its mind away, its power away, its right to choice away to authority. Yeah. That's what it's always done. And, you know, for me, awakening is awakening to your own uniqueness.
Yeah.
And having the self-respect to express that uniqueness and not let anyone tell you what you must be, what you must think, and what opinions you should have.
It's the illusions are just so easy to follow. They're tempting, you know, very tempting. And what happens when you fall into that is that you'll go back into the same cycles of like self-defeat or whatever it is these patterns might be. But there's lots of different patterns that you can fall into. And, you know, but I mean, everybody, the mind, even the brain will program, you know, the brain will program these patterns deep into your, you know, into your actual brain, you know, the way that your synapses fire up, you know, it's easier for us to go with the same path that's been playing out, you know, for most of our lives than it is to go against that. So you can understand the struggle to sort of like change that. It's not like something that can just that just happens overnight. It takes commitment. It takes I like to use the word spiritual muscle, because it's something that you to align with your true self. It takes a little bit of working.
Yeah.
You know, to get that strength to keep yourself in your true energy, rather than you know, swayed by the illusion, because it's like I say, it's so deeply ingrained. But what I find is that the medicines, this is, you know, why I'm so grateful to work with them, because they are amazing tools to be able to break free from these unhealthy patterns that are keeping us stuck and away from our, you know, true purpose. So like Kambo can be super effective at helping us break free from patterns. Anybody that said that they felt like, you know, they're stuck in a rut, you heard that's
very much so. Yeah,
it's like, you know, nothing's going right. You're going around the same cycles and the same patterns over and over again. Well, Kambo really does give us that ability to be able to break free from that. But then even still, after Kambo, you still have to do the work. You still have to, you know, you have to consciously see these patterns, observe them for what they are, because even though we've separated ourselves from them and we feel that we're free from them, in the collective consciousness, in the quantum field, they're still there, you know, and it's very possible for us to go straight back into it again. So Kambo is a great tool, because I believe that Kambo does align us with our true selves, and it clears our energy, clears our aura, so we're able to then witness and see these patterns that were once deeply ingrained in us from a distance.
Yeah, it's music as medicine, like to really acknowledge that music is more than just something that sounds nice that we can put on in the background when we're doing our cooking.
Yeah.
Like when we allow and make space for music to be medicine in our life, which means bringing ourselves and our presence to it and being willing to receive the vibrations, the words, the medicine of that music into our being, which, as you guys will know, is not always comfortable or easy. Then we actually are receiving the spirit. It's a spiritual force. Like music, sound is a force from the spiritual realm. It can also be a force that comes directly from the plants or directly from the river, directly from nature. Nature has this amazing way of communicating, of translating and transmitting its medicine to us through music, through sound, through song, through vibration. And this is becoming an amazing movement as people are beginning to switch on to this more and more and realize, like, I don't really want to listen to like music that kind of makes me feel, actually it makes me feel a bit weird when I listen to that. It's because it's a spiritual force, it therefore can guide us. So in terms of its role for humanity, for me personally, I have quite an emphasis on that music can help us to really feel within, because it's a language of the heart and the soul. It's not a language of the mind. It bypasses the mind. It goes into our body. It speaks, we feel it into our body. It's literally vibration. It vibrates our cells. But there's that mysterious magic of, you can listen to something and you just go, oh my God, I have tears on my face. I don't even know why. And it's important that we don't know why sometimes. It's just because it is moving the waters within our own body. And I feel this first step of being able to feel, really, truly feel what we are, who we are, our sadness, our joy, our grief, our anger, our whatever, our numbness, our stuckness, is the first step towards being able to transform as humanity.
What Archangel Metatron has told me, the guardian angel of that soul is there for eternity. But then what you have is you have an archangel who oversees your physical journey. You have an archangel who oversees your mental, emotional, and intellectual journey. And then you have an archangel that oversees your spiritual journey. So already there's 3 there, plus your guardian angel. But then you have your spiritual, I call like effectively social workers. So if you've got bereavement, you're going to have Archangel Athriel and his ministering angels come in. If we're dealing, sadly, with things like cancer or life-threatening diseases, or even if we're going to have surgery, there's angels there that come and just hold the energies to enable you to get through and process effectively what you need to process at the level that you need to process it at. And so the angels are always there. And it's not a case of, I mean, one of the things that I often get asked is, oh, well, can you prove angels exist? And my response is always the same. Can you prove gravity exists? Because the true answer is, if you look at the scientific community, there's what the scientific community believe is something called gravitational waves, which is a form of energy, but no one's able to actually prove. And that is the same with angels. It's this wave of consciousness that is able to adapt. And I don't feel that we'll ever truly at this level, in this form, understand everything there is to understand about it. But if you can wrap your head around we're all conscious energy, and that all we're really having to do is to become more aware of ourselves as energy. The more aware we are of that, then the more aware we are of being able to experience angelic energies or different frequencies, because we're all intuitive. So it's just really a case of practicing sitting in our own energies and then getting a feel of how to raise or change our vibration and expand that. And also as well, I think one of the biggest issues that most of us have is trusting that process.
Just something I wanted to get into, Ahmed, was as I looked at a lot of your work, that what stood out to me was the unraveling the distortions of history. What we've been taught is history and what we've been taught is truth, and unraveling and seeing things for as they are. I know you do a lot of work on divination and different types, which really interests me as somebody who has always been very drawn to tarot cards and rune stones and such like that. So I was wondering if you could just give us I know it's a huge subject, a little bit of an overview of that.
Wow. The tarot cards, the crystals, all these are the symbology within them is very ancient, and it's part of that ancient memory that was lost. But for that memory, it needed to go into images because language has distorted. Because history is not the truth. History is the hysteria. It's the mystery we have to go back into. And that mystery has to kind of be turned, that M has to be turned upside down into the womb. We have to go back into the womb again. So these tools are great, wonderful tools of divination for us to reach godhood within ourselves, to align the inner masculine and the feminine within our own psyches and within our own consciousness individually. By correcting those two and their imbalance, then you are sane, then you are back to godhood, then you're no longer the fallen one, as they call the fallen angels. We are the fallen angels once we are stuck in the forgetfulness of that memory. And these tools help bring back those memories energetically through the communication of these symbols. It's like the symbol of the Fool, for example. The Fool is the 0. Why is the Fool the 0, not the 1? Why was it chosen to be the 0? Why is the pose why is the Fool dressed in these beautiful, colorful clothes in this sort of carefree, sort of at the edge of the cliff, at the precipice, carefree, without a worry? And the dog I always felt the dog there being like it came to come and greet it, rather than, that's my interpretation anyway. I feel like the dog came from the village somewhere to kind of welcome him, And it's almost like the fool is both masculine and feminine, if that makes sense, because he's got the flower growing out of one hand, and that symbolically is and it's, I think it's, I'm trying to remember which hand it was holding it in, but there is balance in the fool. And the fool is trying to communicate as well that it's the tool for the rest of the tarot cards, as in there needs to be this sort of surrendering to the intellect. The intellect needs to go out so that the communication can come in through the symbols.
But more and more and more people, at least since the turn of 2020, are now starting to open their minds also to see the world in a different way. Part of this knowledge that's kept from us is obviously where the world's being taken, because they want us to believe that events are random and have no connection. Because if you see the connections, that's why I call my books dot connecting books. Then you don't see random dots. You see pictures once you know how they connect. But the other side of this knowledge that's systematically kept from the population, fundamental, without which the other stuff could work, is knowledge of the nature of reality and the true nature of the I, which is not the body, it's the consciousness experiencing through the body. And that consciousness can be the size of a pea, or it can be infinite in nature. And that's not, I'm infinite in nature, you've got consciousness the size of a pea, so I'm better than you. No, it's a choice. Because, we talk about consciousness, and I am this consciousness, and you're that consciousness, and you're that consciousness. Well, yeah, because you're an individual point of attention at this point, perceiving through the body, which focuses attention in a certain very narrow band of frequencies we call the world. That is the band of frequency of this world. The visual world that we see is so narrow, it's almost laughable. I don't think that's an accident either. Anyway, but actually, every individual, whatever your point of consciousness or point of attention, we are also all other consciousness. We are the whole as we are the focused attention. The two are the same. This is why racism is so ludicrous, because we're all the same consciousness having different experiences.
Yeah.
But they're just vehicles to experience. And if you notice, because it all connects, this identity politics is about subdividing what I call phantom self, because there's the infinite self, consciousness, and then there's the label self, what I call phantom self. This is believing the I is, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm this race, I'm that religion, I'm this sexuality, and so on. No, that's what you're experiencing. It's not what you are, the true I. The true I is consciousness, ultimately all consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you want to control people, you don't want them to know that they are all that is, has been, and ever can be, having a brief experience called human. You don't want them to know that.
No.
You want them to self-identify with limitations. So you want them to self-identify with the labels and the life story and all this stuff. And the short game is, I am my labels, and I've got the biblical 70 years and 10, and then I'm out of here. And either I'm going to be judged by some God, because some guy in a frock's told me I will be, or I'm just going to disappear into nothingness because there is no afterlife, right? So that's basically the choice. And so you're going to play the short game, and you're going to look at this life in a completely different way to someone who is aware of their true nature and plays the long game. What I mean by short and long game is this. If you have an experience like being intimidated by the police over lockdown, or being forced to do this or do that, and you're frightened of standing up, well, you'll be frightened of standing up because you're playing the short game. And to you, this is a short life, and you don't want to face the consequences of actually doing what you know to be right, which is to stand up to this crap. But when you're playing the long game, not only the moment, the experience in the moment, but the whole human life experience from cradle to grave, but the body, not you, is just a infinitesimal smear in the exploration of forever. So that state of long game consciousness does not see standing up to authority as a experience as intimidating, because it's just a brief infinitesimal experience in the journey through forever. And even the human life itself is a smear within forever in terms of what we call time. And what you realize is that whatever you're experiencing is just an experience in that moment. And there'll be another one along eventually, and then another one, and then another one, and then another one. And eventually you leave the body and you expand back into a greater awareness of self. So, you know, it's a completely different way of looking at the world and looking at life.
And respect yourself. And that also, by the way, extends to your thinking, your behavior. I mean, none of us are perfect. We're all down here to live in this world. And, you know, occasionally we get into situations. That's fine. Nobody's expecting us to be angels. But generally, you know, try and respect yourself and give spirit the best chance to work through you.
Yeah, I feel that's excellent advice, that for any form of spiritual work, actually. Not only with trance work, it's just some things just don't go together. And I know I could probably speak for Stephen that we found naturally during our sort of development, life just naturally changed. And there were some things we left to one side because we wanted to experience more of the energies we were feeling and less of what we'd been around.
It's almost like a drug, isn't it? You know, you want more of it. And the other thing is, of course, you do change when you're working in these energies and you're learning things, and you can experience some mind-blowing stuff and information, and you think, wow, you know, and you want more of that, and you think, well, do I really want to sit, you know, watching, you know, the news and listening to all that? You know, you sort of lose interest in it. I did anyway. Even now, I find it really difficult to listen to the news, which is mainly negative anyway.
Propaganda.
Propaganda. Absolutely, totally with you on that. You just want to be in those higher energies.
Yeah, we used to have a saying on our circle night when it was somebody's birthday, what better place to be on your birthday than in the circle that you're going to experience.
Yeah, absolutely. What better birthday present than that? Yeah, totally agree.
So just as we sort of move on here, speaking of White Feather and in his work with yourself, the channeling, what would you say are the core teachings that he's brought through in the time working with you?
That's a good question.
That's a very good question, that, Chris.
I think the thing is, I mean, there's many things that you know I could bring into that, but I think mainly one is to know yourself and to be true to yourself. But I think the other one is to put others before yourself in terms of service. He often says, and this is a term that Silver Birch has also used, you know, that service is the coin of the spirit, and that if you can help someone, not looking for anything for yourself, but just for the joy and of service and helping that person who is in need, you're going to get something back anyway, you know, in return, because there's no giving without receiving. But if you think how the world would be transformed if people lived to help other people and to serve others. I mean, we live in a world, don't we, that's very much power-based, and greed seems to be, you know, an evil that's everywhere, you know. And people measure success by wealth and position and power, everything's the wrong way round. And I think if only we could get back, and White Feather often emphasizes this, that service is the key. Help others, the world will be a better place, you will be helped in return. And that seems to me to be a pretty good exchange, and if you can also know yourself, and by that I mean getting beyond, the personality and, this life is all there is sort of thing. If you can know yourself as infinite consciousness and awareness that never dies, that was never born, never dies, if you can know yourself, that is very, very empowering. Very, very empowering.
It's one of the biggest blocks to mediumship, is the fear of getting it wrong. Many talented mediums who won't get up on stage because they fear being ridiculed, they fear that they're giving the wrong message, and they fear that they're not as good enough or they're not as good as the next person. And yet that stops them being exceptional mediums, Yeah. And I don't know if you've ever come across a medium from up Scotland way called Lauren Robertson. She's written a few books. She does a lot for this Centre for Psychical Research and Conan Doyle Centre in Edinburgh and things like that. She gives a lot of talks. She has a good theory, and it's called dismantling the dam. So when the energy flows from spirit or from the universe, whatever you want to think, it's like a river flowing. And we tap into that flow, and you'll know when you talk to spirit, you get the first little bits, and then you open up and it all flows out. Because we've done the work, and we've got to the experience where we can do that now without any fear. But the people who are just starting, they block themselves. And it's the same with anything in life, but let's just use media as an example. Over the course of their lifetime, from being an early child, they've had a criticism, they've had judgment. And so all these things have built up, and they made like a dam across this river, this flow from the universe. So what we're going to do is dismantle the dam. Lauren Robertson calls it dismantling the dam. And what happens is, as you know, with a dam, if you take one brick out, all the others get loose and get washed away. Okay, so it just opens up the flow then. And that one brick, for most people, is the fear of judgment or the fear of criticism or the fear of getting it wrong. And that can be for life, and it can be for mediumship. So if we can dismantle that dam and let things flow, we'll find life a lot easier.
One of the greatest illusions in our world, Jonathan, the illusions of time. It's with one of the greatest prisons that has imprisoned so many of us here on this earth. But like you said, Jonathan, it has felt very different for us here at the Purple Mountain. Spirit have said about the times changing, and it does feel very different, the energy, when you're not imprisoned by that time.
Yes, it does. You feel less tied to times, but of course sometimes you have to be at a certain place at a certain time in your world. That is understandable, but you are thinking less about time. And because you are awakening and because you are connected to our world a little more often, it makes a difference. I also mentioned about the mass awakening, which is happening, the huge awakening, and the mass exodus, which is also happening.
So can you explain that a little bit more? What you mean by, we use the term awakening, but how does Spirit see that? What on your side? What does the word awakening mean as us as humans here on this earth?
Yes, we know that you do your spiritual connections, you see, but you have a spirit inside yourself. And when you meet that, you have met your true self. Because there's no one else other than your true self, which is your soul, that within. And when you meet that, life really begins to turn around. But an awakening is not always about, flowers and dancing and hugging and all of that. There can be many tests of awakening. And of course, when the tests come, what it is your fears you are facing, your truth that you are facing within you. And because it is a worldly awakening, many truths are arising in your world, not only individually, but in crowds of others as well outside of yourselves. So it's happening to every person. The truth is arising, and now they're all fearing and clinging on to it. But if you face it and overcome it, that furthers you on your journey to your further awakening, you see. And a lot of people don't want to face their fears because they see them as demonstrative. But if you don't face it, your subconscious will keep throwing it at you until you do.
Well, you can't outrun what the soul needs to learn.
Yes, but it learns and overcomes things, and if not in this life, in another life.
we're with a tribe, we are with our spirit family, and in a way we've come back to come back into this reality, into this realm, to learn to be the independent warrior, the independent healer, the shaman, magician, whoever the archetype we've come back to play, and that we've chosen to meet these the darker realms, the demonic. Yeah, part of it is a projection. I've seen that projection from within me, that I know that really, I don't want to see, and actually what that requires, that projection, which requires just unconditional love.
Yeah.
That's where that is, and I'm absolutely amazing. You see that, it just requires that unconditional love, these projections that we can have, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, again, some people think that projecting love onto darkness is stupid because it enables it or it feeds it, but that's only true if you haven't accessed that heart frequency through your own efforts first. So there is a spiritually bypassed version of that, which is just kind of projecting love and light. We know that anyway. We've discussed that, all that false light stuff. But the version you're talking about is what I've come to realize actually still an antidote to dark forces, is to extinguish them. Not in the sense of, I'm trying to destroy you. With none of that. But we don't want any of that anymore. We don't need to do any of that. We need to just understand how this works, the laws of energy, the laws of reality, and realize that holding that heart frequency and even having love for those dark aspects is important. The reason being is because everything is an emanation of source that's lost its way. Not everything's lost its way, but those beings are deeply tormented and they've lost their way. And the only truth that remains is love, because love is the bridge that connects everything back again. That doesn't mean that we have to invite these beings into our home and have dinner with them.
Imagine that.
I'm not gonna just have like Voldemort around for dinner. It's like, but this kind of love, it's that pure essence that we embody, that firstly starves the entities or the beings, whatever they are, from feeding off our unresolved shadow, and secondly, it transforms the energetic landscape.
So right after World War II ended, Admiral Byrd, right after the surrender of Japan, he took a full-blown carrier fleet down to Antarctica called Operation High Jump, not classified. 5,000 men, support ships, the whole 9 yards. And we don't know what happened there, but there's a lot of speculation they were trying to root out the last of the Nazis. But whatever happened in 1950, by 1954, it was over, because he went on television and was talking about how there's going to be all these countries down there for the next 100 years, and they're going to be fighting over minerals, and there's a mountain range made out of coal, and there's oil, and there's uranium, the whole 9 yards. And he was actually worried. He's like, well, we might even get into a conflict down there. And then the next thing you know, he goes to Operation Deep Freeze, and whatever he found, I think he found part of the outer marker, which was the edge of the snow globe, at least was within striking distance. At that point, he comes back, and he was going to go on another media tour, and he died of a heart attack back at his home in Massachusetts. Maybe suspicious, maybe not. If you look at the guy, he looked like a picture of health. I mean, career military man. Nothing seemed to be wrong with him. And then in 1959, almost immediately after that, they started working on what's known as the Antarctic Treaty. And you can find it. There's PDFs, easy to find online. And is the only unbroken treaty in the history of treaties, which says that no corporation from anywhere can set up shop in Antarctica forever. And so your fracking thing, I joke about with people. I go, look, in the United States, we can start fracking in your neighbor's backyard in a week. It does not take long to do, because all you have to do is, start throwing briefcases of money at people, and they absolutely will do it. And yet those same companies, huge amounts of liquid assets, cannot touch Antarctica. In fact, I've used British Petroleum as an example many a time. It's like, not only are they not allowed to go down there, They're not allowed. Here's the red flag for me. This is what really got me into the whole, really pushed me in deep into the rabbit hole, which was you're not allowed to talk about it. So if you're British Petroleum, you could run full page ads in the London whatever newspaper, and every month saying how great it would be to have us set the jobs and economic security and all this stuff. You're not even allowed to do that. Since when has that ever happened? And it's like, oh yeah, I know exactly how that played out. Some government official goes to the head of British Petroleum and they say, so you're not going down there, and it's under national security blanket. I can't tell you why. And when you finally retire, whoever comes in, give him my business card, because I'm going to tell him the same thing. And that's it. That is all that she wrote. And to this day, I think at any given point, there's less than 5,000 people in Antarctica. Nobody owns it. Nobody owns Antarctica, which is staggering. Everybody owns every inch of real estate outside of Antarctica. But this massive continent, nobody owns anything. And no corporations. The only people that are allowed to go down there are military scientists, and the occasional tourist. I mean, you can pay, I think in British pounds, I think it's around 13,000 British pounds to take a trip down there. And it is extremely hostile. In fact, the whole continent screams to go away. Most people don't know that most of the continent sits above 14,000 feet.
So really what I want to talk about tonight, Max, is something that is really relevant. And I feel it's very relevant, certainly to the last 2 to 3 years on the earth, what's unfolded and continues to unfold, is moving away individually from that victim state that I feel not only the system promotes, the many systems in this world, but also that many can find themselves stuck in, and move into a place of empowerment and finding our healing path. So I'd just like to hear your thoughts on that and the experiences you've had with some of your clients.
Yeah, sure. I love that you said that the system wants us to be in that, because it definitely does. And a lot of the popular points of view that you'll see promoted by controlled talking heads and influences, celebrities and politicians and whatever, they promote very much like a victim orientation of thinking. And it's kind of sneaky. It's not, obviously they're not overtly saying you're a victim and whatever, but what they want is for people to be disconnected from themselves and dependent on authorities and centralized supply networks, whether that's like medicine or getting their food or whatever. But yeah, it's very much like globally there's this effort to push us into this mass victim consciousness. And you have things like, if you look at what happened in China in the 90s, where, it's like 98, 99, Qigong hit its peak in China. And there were hundreds of millions of people practicing Qigong in China. Everywhere people were developing special abilities and obviously healing whatever diseases they were plagued with. But there was this mass movement of self-empowerment and healing. And so this departure from victim consciousness. And then what happens? The CCP decides it needs to crack down because the people are getting too self-realized. They're getting too powerful. They're starting to realize too much about the power that they could tap into. And so they start cracking down on it. They start putting people in prison. They even started killing people. It's pretty well known now about Falun Gong or Falun Dafa, how they imprisoned or killed many of the leaders of that movement. It wasn't just that, though. It was other disciplines of Qigong as well. Other even spiritual movements were squashed because it was empowering people. So there's what I see is this mass push by the controllers of the world to program us to be victims, and then also this mass push back by the people of the world realizing like, oh no, wait, we don't have to be victims. We can actually trust intuition and trust things that our bodies are telling us. Why is it that home remedies of 100 years ago are so effective, and today you can go to the doctor multiple times without even starting to make a dent in your illness?
Absolutely true. And a lot of people say our generations before that, even myself and Stephen know, that they're saying often to us when we're looking at natural remedies. Oh, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that when I was a kid.
Yeah. You got like weird, obscure stuff like putting a stake on your eye or whatever, but it works really, really well.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
Stephen, you put a lot out there with those when they were suffering colds and flus with the onion.
Yeah.
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
it's a massive. It's one of the. I call it the humble onion, and I did a little 20-minute video because so many people are suffering from earache, and I say to people as well in our health and wellbeing clinic, you don't have to suffer. People suffer unnecessarily, and you use things like the onion to help with hearing infection. You put it on your ear, and you can see results within the first 2-3 hours. It's I say the proof is in the pudding. Try it yourself. Do it. Medication, man-made pharmaceutical company medication, only masks the problem, and it really does. It keeps you in a lower state. Natural herbs and fruits and spices and roots, we call them, they are served. They're here to serve humanity. Let them serve us. They're amazing. Amazing when you get into the herbal side, you know what you can learn and how it can heal the body.
Yeah, it's really kind of a crime against humanity that this stuff is even called alternative when it should be the primary. You know, but so you cut an onion in half and put it to your ear. Is that how that works?
Yeah, I'll send you the link because it's
cool.
something that I'm very, very passionate about. You know, little remedies.
Yeah.
You know, you can actually get an onion and mix it in with honey, and you can keep it in the fridge for about 8 or 9 months, and you can use it as a cough medicine. You can use it for children. You can put a hot poultice, you know, heat the onion up, fresh onion, wrap it up, put it on your throat, put it on your ear, and it pulls out the infection. You know what an onion does when you cut it? It makes your eye water, it makes your nose run. And that's what it does. It draws out the infection. This is why little things like never leave a cut onion in your fridge because it absorbs negative energy. But when you move into a new house, because you're probably into feng shui and qigong, you know, energy, Max. You know, you want to check out how good an energy is in your room. Cut an onion in half, or leave a lemon at the side of in your room to see where the strongest energy centers are in your room. And if it goes moldy, if the lemon or the onion goes moldy, it means it's bad energy. And if it dries up, it's okay. So there's a lot of techniques you can use.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, the onions are super popular for a lot of reasons right now too. Like people are using them, guys are using them to increase their testosterone, eating more onions. I know that it's being used a lot. Like people are putting it around their beds to purify the room. I mean, I think that onions can even neutralize radioactive like particle emissions. Like I think that onions, there was some major event, I don't know what meltdown it was, but they used onions to neutralize the aftermath of the radioactive fallout, which is insane. And you can buy it at the store for however many currencies you guys use.
It's about, you could get one for like 50 pence. And
I knew it was one of those words, pence, quid, whatever.
That journey, anybody listening. But what advisement would you give to people? And I want to really bring Stephen in on this as well, with somebody who's sat there and feeling like, where do I begin on this journey? I know I'm feeling spirit or seeing spirit. I feel it might be my journey to work mediumistically, clairvoyantly. Do I go somewhere? What advice would you give from your experiences?
From my experience, there's several aspects to it. One of the most important things that you learn over time as a medium is you need to give off or to pass on the message that's come through, right? And there's no substitute for the more that you do it, the better that connection is. And it is that sort of analogy of they're ringing you on the phone, and if you're not answering, you can answer the phone, but then if you're not passing the message on, that stops there, you know. So you need to keep that flow going. So the first thing I would say is find people that you are safe with, that you can sort of almost practice on, you know, and get into that way, build up the confidence, and in a safe situation where you're not worried if it's not all 100% correct and things like this. but so that you are getting that flow. And the more you flow and the more that it's that you pass these things on, because part of the equation is the person who's receiving the message as well.
Yes.
Vitally important factor in it. If they don't understand a thing about it, then the connection's not there, you know. So it's finding a safe place, first off, to give off these little things, okay? And even if it's just something as simple as they pick up, like a clairsentience type thing, where they will pick up maybe, yeah, you're not feeling very good today, are you? Or you've been really worried about something. And as soon as that person starts to say, well, yes, actually, I've been feeling a bit tearful or something, you'll get more and more coming through, and just build on it then. And then you'll get to the point where quite possibly amazing facts come through. So I would say do all that initially and trust. And what you mentioned before, trust in what you've got, you know, and trust in what you are feeling. And if it's safe to do it, give that off, even if it's just a feeling, oh, you're feeling very happy today, something good, you know. And as soon as you start agreeing and saying yes, your loved ones in the spirit will come through anyway, and then you'll start getting that, it'll start flowing. So that's my advice, is to practice it in a safe way to start with. That's what I think.
I 100% agree. And I remember when I started off, and a lot of my practice was in an open circle. And I remember, you know, Spirit saying to me, you know, they were giving me things before I stood up, and it was an agreement that I made with my guides. And then they come to a point where it's about trust here now, Stephen. We're not giving you anything until you stand up, and we'll tell you where to go. And I thought, and that really tested my trust in Spirit. But I needed to, I asked for that. It was part of my learning. And until I stood up and didn't know where I was going, did then the message come. And it was then trust. And I think any advisement sorts of anybody that wants to get into this kind of work is, you know, your development classes are great, but I think really just being in an open circle environment is the best, because I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of projection, and it's not our job to project the way we want other people to work, because really that is hindering, that's creating barriers for that person. The best thing we can do who've gained that experience is to create that space for people to come safely, to be their true self with them and their guides, because ultimately it would be my ego to say, oh, I'm helping this person to become a medium. No, that's not. You know, you are already spirit, you are already connected.
100%.
So you need to look at the barriers, the self-doubt, the lack of self-worth, the lack of confidence. That's the barriers we create. We are spirit, we are connected. So my advisement is look at, you know, apart from sitting in open circle, do a bit of inner work. Meditation is great. Psychotherapy, look at your confidence and look at your self-worth. Aspects of that really, for me, has helped me become a better medium. I mean, another thing, you know, you look back on your life, don't you? And you understand why you've gone through certain things. And I went to uni and I did hospitality management, and looking back now thinking, how crazy was I? Now I'm doing mediumship. But what I learned through that was I learned about presentational skills. I learned how to speak properly. I learned aspects about myself that I feel that I would have not have learned. And that really helped me prepare me. I didn't know at the time, prepare me standing up. And it can be scary standing there in front of 200 people and you're shaking. And
I think that's a good point you made as well, because I know we were talking earlier about you coming away from your job as well, Robert, but also to recognise that that's a huge part of our journey, that we were there for a reason. You know, it might be to the people we meet, the skills that we pick up that will come into practice. So
everything
a really good point.
Synchronicity.
So don't be sitting at home thinking, oh my God, I shouldn't be in this. You are where you need to be as well.
And when people, you touch on some great points there, where you talk about, say, classes or development classes and structures like this, really, you can't teach the pure mediumship. All you can do is get somebody or help somebody to be in the best possible place to let that happen. But it's going to happen for them, as you said, because they're actual spirits. So you can't teach that. And I'm massively against structure. It's one of my crusades. This kind of structure over, and I always put it into sort of more simple terms in a way. If I could have a tour, my mum's in spirit world. If I could speak to my mum now for 5 minutes, just have a quick chat with her, right? I would not be asking her, when was I born? What date was I, when did I graduate? What did I think? I'd be wanting to know, how are you? Are you okay? Are you proud of me? All those things.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
Absolutely. And and if I just was restricted with a list of things, why are you here? Why have you come? All these things.
That's barriers.
Absolutely. I would have considered that 5 minute wasted. It would have been when I had the opportunity to get that. So I'm always teach, just go with the flow of the person in the spirit world will lead you, will tell you what they want to do. And that's when you get the most amazing connections.
I agree.
And I've had some of the most beautiful things, which brought me to tears, where I've had people say to me, I've waited 20 years to ask that question, and it may be just about some jewelry or about something that they wanted to ask about. And they said, it's been on my mind. This is the person in the spirit world for 20 years. Or I've had the same thing with somebody alive I'm giving a message to, and they've said, I've been needing to talk about this ever since my mum died 10 years ago. And they are the real messages and the real beautiful connections, not some structure about why are you here, and a sort of 5 questions and then leave you with a gift. I mean, if they want to leave you with a gift, that's fine, but only if it's coming from them in the spirit world.
When we're talking about protection, Jenny, it's a really good opportunity, doing these podcasts, trying to get that knowledge out there. What advice would you give to, whether it's up and coming, spirit works, mediums, anybody like that, about protection techniques and
go back to basics? I've just started, obviously, again, my class online. It's called iMedium. So if anybody wants to join it, by all means, they just got to join the page. It's a closed group. It's on a Sunday night. We've started from the basics. And like I've said to everybody in the group, I don't care who you are, what the pathway you've got, I'm an established medium. I'm quite happy to go back to basics. Not because I'm teaching it, because it actually reminds me of where I've come from.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of where I'm heading. And it keeps me back in line again. And every time I think I'm starting to drift, I think Spirit just say, right, let's start again, Jennifer. And I'm quite happy for that, because it brings me back. And the first week we did learn about your intuition, because it's about the difference, about what this energy, to me, the lower 3 is all about the stabilizing factors of who you are as a person. So once we get these cracked, we can move forward.
Foundation, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's why I say to everybody, the first lower 3 energies, if we don't understand them, why am I going to let you open up to Spirit to something you don't know? If you don't know you, why should we trust you with Spirit? Because these are beautiful people. Why would I expect them to come all this way with love and light and step into this horrible, dense energy, thick, with rotten intentions, to come and speak to you, who really has got no better intentions than what you're saying? Not going to do it. So my job is to keep them protected. As we all know, when we're working, our job is to keep them from harm and allowing naughties to get near them as well, because we're stood in this dense energy. So for me, it's about protection. It's about every day putting that protection up and building it. You've got to build it. It's not a case of, I put it up last week. Every day you're going to get somebody, and you need to know what is to the left of you, what is to the right of you. What are these 2 energies, which are the female and the male, and where is the balancer, which is the God source? You need to know what you're balancing. You need to know that the left-hand side is a lesser energy. It's a heavy energy. It's a dense energy. That's why the naughty section live in it. And that's why they're connected to the earth, and that's why it's easier for you. And as we walk across the earth, the left and the right foot is absorbing and dissipating. So every day you bring in the balance, and you bring in that the number 8. What's it called? The infinity symbol, and that energy is circulating through you to keep you grounded. So you're going to keep grounded. You get to know these first 3 energies, and this is the only part. We're in 6 weeks, and we're still only learning here. So the first week we did the intuition, and then we talked about the next week we talked about prayer, because for me prayer is massive.
Definitely huge.
And we talked, and we stripped down the Lord's Prayer, and so basically we could see what, instead of just reading it off parrot fashion, because we've all been taught it since we were kids, to actually strip it down and what's being asked for. So you understand where your intention is, what you're asking for, how you're putting together this prayer. So when you come to actually putting your own prayers together, you know what you're asking for. You know where the power sits.
Now, it was funny because I just met two lads and I was bawling my eyes out, crying with Wim Hof, like trying to get my words out. And these two fellas looking at me thinking, what's going on here? Like, why is he crying? And Wim Hof, he grabbed my head and he put our heads together and he said, she's with us now. She's here with us. And like, I got shivers. I was like, fucking hell. Like, and then all that weekend, I got this overwhelming feeling that my mum was with me. And it was so strange. And there was a point, I've got the video on my phone, Wim Hof was singing this song. And I just had this, like, I guess, emotional release. And I just started crying because I felt my mum was with me. And I was like, she sent me here. Like, and I met people at that festival, which I wouldn't have obviously met if I didn't go, that are, like, really important to me, you know. So it's, it was mental how it all happened. But like you said before, Stephen, the spirits and that side of things, I think, like you said as well, Chris, it's undeniable. It's undeniable. So I can't wait to see where she sends me next.
And what's great about it is it's, you know, it's you could look at something that might be chaos, but there is sort of an underlying order and perfection to things as well. As like, how can that happen? You know, just where you might off chance go somewhere and then you bump into, and it all lines up, just aligns perfectly. It couldn't have been written better. And you're like, that has happened for a reason and a purpose. You know,
trust.
And this is it. And I actually feel, you know, something that was really important to myself and Stephen, you know, we made a lot of opportunity over the last years, last 2 to 3 years, and sat with a lot of different healing groups. And you know, when people start to open up that vulnerable side, it's really what brings us all together. I feel it's really important now more than ever, and we're seeing it. Whether it's men's groups, there's women's groups, there's you know, for everybody, and I feel that's so important to start to come together as a community, put our phones to one side, talk, share experiences, laugh, dance together, be stupid, and start to open up again to one another and realize that person living across the street actually they're not much different from you. They're going through the same challenges. They've been through the same shit. And that's what can bring us together, you know, that unity. And I think that's the key to sort of changing things on a big scale.
Definitely. The thing you mentioned about vulnerability, I really, really try and home in on that and make sure people are aware. Being vulnerable is a sign of strength. It's not a sign of weakness. You know what I mean? Like, I got brought up in a house of 3 lads, and my mum didn't even know what emotion was, never mind process them and deal with them and speak about them. And now, like, it's my job to speak about them, you know, and I do it on a daily basis, and I love speaking about it as well. But being vulnerable is the first step to change. It's the first step, you know, and a lot of people, more so lads, but women as well, they won't want to open up because of the fear of judgment. And again, worrying about what other people think, right? So if they can get rid of that and just open up to that one person or open up that one time to the right person, it relieves a hell of a lot of weight off your shoulders, a hell of a lot of weight. And it's not even uncommon now to say I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z. But that's the first step you need to take to change, because otherwise, what's the other option? You don't open up, you struggle on by yourself, and you maybe get around what challenge you're going through. But if you open up and get help, it's a lot more likely you're going to get through it.
Your body functions on cholesterol. There's no such thing as good nor bad cholesterol. Cholesterol is used to transport things around the body. It gets better when it's exposed to sunlight, especially ultraviolet sunlight. It turns into vitamin D. So what do we have at the moment? We have a crisis in the UK. People have low vitamin D levels. If you're taking statins, you're lowering your cholesterol. If you lower your cholesterol, you're lowering your body's ability to make vitamin D. The whole thing is nonsense. And so what I say to people about cholesterol is, if they had found a substance 40 years ago that raised cholesterol in the body, they would be testing for cholesterol, and they'd be telling you that it was too low, and they'd be telling you to take the drugs to raise it. It's nonsense. Ignore it. It is of no value to you whatsoever to know your levels or to worry about them or to even think about them. Your body controls your cholesterol levels. It produces the right amount for the conditions that your body is experiencing at the time.
I would go further than nonsense. It's criminal.
It's absolutely criminal.
It's absolutely criminal. Ansel Keys, who was paid to do the lipid hypothesis, is a perfect example of what we mentioned earlier, that there's no science or nearly no science going on. He cherry-picked data to form a correlation between saturated fat, cholesterol, and heart disease, that if all the data was in, there was no pattern, no nothing. And that was the lipid hypothesis. And medicine took it, and as Graham rightfully said, they took it so that they could then create a test that created a drug, which is one of the best-selling drugs in history. Statins is absolutely one of the worst drugs people have ever taken, because prior to it, we just didn't have the neurological decline, but when we ate lots of animal fats, it just didn't happen. So I think it's absolutely criminal. I think Ansel Keys is responsible for millions and millions and millions of deaths and suffering and horrific ends of life. And interestingly, after discovering or publishing the lipid hypothesis, of which to this day there's no evidence that saturated fat causes heart disease or cholesterol, no evidence at all, actually. But after he published it, he then went to the Mediterranean and pretty much ate a carnivore diet and lived to over 100, certainly late into his 90s. But, the facts are every cell in your body has cholesterol. Your brain is made of cholesterol. Cholesterol, the body makes 75, 80% of the cholesterol. Eating cholesterol is going to have very little effect on raising your cholesterol. And it was never the cholesterol anyway that was causing the plaques. It was, at the moment, most good thinking, critical thinking, scientific people would place their money on the oxalates found in plants. Oxalates will be as well known as gluten in 5 years. Oxalates are microscopic shards of glass, like particles found in particularly green leaf plants, and we're pushing a plant-based diet now by the World Health Organization, and the seed oils. Seed oils is got to be the biggest coup they've ever managed. The animals won't eat seed oils, marketed as vegetable oils. The seed oils were only ever used for oiling machines, lighting lamps, and making soap. And then when petroleum came in and they couldn't sell it as soap or those things anymore, they brought the chemists in and turned it into Crisco, which looks like lard. And they managed to convince the American market and then the world that eating basically oil that was for machinery and lamps was a healthy fat. And animal fats, which we've lived off for thousands of years, were bad for you. I mean, these people are many things, but stupid they ain't, right? They've literally got us eating industrial oils as healthy, right? So, when you start to, again, it's like the virus I said, even if a virus existed, made you sick, the solution isn't it's a whole plethora of other things. The reason heart disease is around is more to do with what I've just discussed and a few other things, including the etheric level. The heart is the organ of love. Poets have known it for centuries. The Chinese have known it. And the heart is fed by joy through the blood. And that's why the Chinese have concentrated on the more etheric side of things. And anybody that's had heart problems that I've consulted with usually had affairs of the heart that had been damaged, literal affairs or broken hearts or, grief or something like that, or great trauma of the heart.
Most people are like, what is kinesiology? Most people like me, I had no idea what it was. I had no idea how it could help me. But it literally changed my entire life because I got to tweak my diet, my foods. I could find out what exactly my body needed nutritionally with supplements, what was going on in my gut. My gut was in a hot mess, literally. And it took me a few years to sort my gut out. Obviously, the gut-brain axis is our main thought pathway, and our nervous system creates everything that happens in the body, how we feel, whether we're stressed, whether we're calm, whether we're something in between. And kinesiology just fixed everything, literally. So kinesiology is mental, chemical, physical, and energetical. So we're looking at the mind, we're looking at attitude, we're looking at higher power, feelings, traumas, emotions. I suffered trauma throughout my life and childhood. Unbeknown to me, it was so blocked, I didn't even know it was there. Chemically, you know, we look at the body, what food goes in, what water we're drinking, is the water clean? What medication or drugs are we taking? What's going on our skin? You know, are we putting cream on that's full of toxins? You know, are we breathing in polluted air? What's in our food? Is the preservatives in? So chemically, I could test the body what toxicity is and what chemicals and how to get rid of them. Physically, so your structure, your bones, your muscles, your tendons, your posture, how you exercise, how you rest, how you sleep. Physically, the body is always talking to us, it's always giving us a story, but more often than not, I've got a pain in my shoulder, I'll just, you know, give it a massage. Oh, got this really nagging pain in my shoulder. The shoulder pain could be coming from some emotion that's been trapped since 1972 that you've forgotten about.
I believe I have got a spiritual job, is to remove fear from people, is to get them to be able to access their own I am power. I believe that in the center of every one of us and every living thing, we have got a place that is so small we can't ever see it. But it's a paradox, because in that place that we can't see and that is actually a nothingness is in fact the place that contains everything, all knowledge of all creation, past, present, and destined future. I add the word destined because the future can be manipulated in many different ways. But if the soul has a destined future, or if our lovely planet has a destined future, which it does, or even the solar system itself, then what we need is to know how to work to the future that is within us, because we can be a little bit like a jigsaw puzzle, if you like, a little tiny bit like one of those jigsaw puzzles. We are all little pieces of that. And in our soul, we have got something that keeps on pushing us and prodding us and making us go further and further so that we will fulfill our soul's purpose. I also want to say there's always a beginning, a middle, and an end. And we are seeing an awful lot of wonderful souls moving on because they have fulfilled their work. And this is applying to everybody. So what I would like to do, if I can, is to sort of say to you, in the center of your soul, in that place where there is stillness that lies behind the silence, that is where you have your I am power. And everybody can access it. And that's my job. My job is to help people to lose their fear, to lose their, if you like, reliance on other people, but at the same time knowing they desperately need them for support because we cannot do without them. But what we can do is use what I call the seventh sense, that's that place of nothingness, and then use our sixth sense, which is all the information coming through the third eye, as confirmation. So if we can get the information from our soul's enormous library of knowledge, we can then use our beautiful connection to all this other stuff that we've been working with and bringing our sort of spiritual journey, if you like, and make that something that we can use to support, to enrich. And because we're human, come on, we're going to question. Then we use that area to give us confirmation that what we are sensing, our seventh sense, is right. Because unfortunately, nobody else but us can feel that sensing and that power. It's our own. It's our very own.
And I used to say to Spirit, right, I want this message before I stand up. And Spirit did. And then they came to a point, no, we're not going to give you anything because you need to stand up and trust us and trust yourself that we're going to be there.
I think a lot of people have experienced that.
And that is really building up a very strong relation. This is how you build up your connection with your spirit team. Is to say, can you trust us because we trust you?
Yeah.
It comes both ways. And it amazes me sometimes when, and again, I'm not judging, when mediums are, in my eyes, disrespectful to guides and say, where are you? I need you to be here. If I was your guide, I would say, go away. I'm going to take a step back. So, always show gratitude, always be respectful, not only to yourself and to your spirit team, but overshadowing is the same. And when I developed, I was really lucky because I had a really good circle leaders that really knew what they were doing. And that's important because they empowered me and I knew I was being overshadowed. I was aware what was happening, but I felt like I had no control. I allowed it to happen.
So what actually happens during the overshadowing process? How could you describe it for those who are listening who perhaps have never heard of it before?
Well, the overshadowing starts with one simple thing. As you're sitting there, a word will come to you.
Yeah.
And in trance, they will say that word out loud. And what's the ego going to say? I'm going to sound stupid.
Yeah.
You're going to be saying something to me. Oh my God, there's no way I can do that. Testing your doubt, testing your trust. Spirit aren't testing you, you're testing yourself here.
Yeah.
Because if you want to work with spirit, you've got to learn these tough experiences. And that voice comes in. Speak the voice. And my personal experiences was my hand was going all funny. The energy in my solar plexus was building and pulling, a lot of pulling in the solar plexus. The crown was opening. I was feeling very physical sensations.
Yeah.
My breathing went deep. And it took me about half an hour to an hour to go off. But Roy and Anita were patient. They knew what was happening. It was just the way that I was developing. So I was very lucky that they were very patient. But then what you've got on the other side, which I know that you're very passionate about, is this is the most delicate time.
Yeah.
Because if you've got circle leaders that say, you're not in trance, whatever's coming through is not right, that can really, really be off-putting. That can stop somebody's work just like that.
Yeah.
And I know we've seen this in other groups. You've got to create a container, patience. It can take years for that possible medium to develop.
Yeah.
So you've got to have the right people around to support that person.
What would you say? And of course, this isn't in judgment. We're just giving an opinion here. We're talking in reality to things that actually go on, that we've experienced or that we've been asked over the years. What would your opinions be when people say, I was sat and somebody came in and I didn't feel I had control?
Well, first of all is you've got to not got to understand, but understand.
And just to rectify that, sorry, spirit. When spirit have come into their body and they said, "Oh, I didn't have." They just came in and I didn't have any control.
No, it really annoys me when people say that. Not annoys me, but I get my back up and I roll my eyes a bit. And I know I'm human. I have my flaws and I have my points as well. But ultimately, it comes down to knowing who you are, trusting, and as spirit are drawing close, it's a partnership. You are allowing that to happen. If you sit in there in a circle and they say, wow, this spirit have just jumped in. No, they haven't. You've allowed that to happen.
Yeah.
And it's learning about self-responsibility.
Yeah.
And also learning if the energy that you don't like, they don't have to come through. You ask them to take a step back. I don't like your energy. You need to step out my aura here. You remember it's empower, and if you know your own power, you know what you need to do, and you know what energy you're working with or not.
I personally went into a spontaneous Kundalini awakening in 1994 to 96 for 2 years, because I had started to study and understood now the path of ageless wisdom and understanding that it's about harmlessness, really choosing the path of harmlessness. And somehow that helped me recapitulate many previous life trainings within what's called the Vajrayana lineage. Deep in mantra, deep. I'm very deeply recognized by Tibetan lamas and masters and teach with them. And this is, you know, like I've had many lives of a lot of mantra practice. So my channels were clear at this point for all of this energy to be activated. So, you know, actually, I really dedicate my life to support people in Kundalini awakening, because that is what's going to bring us to the point where the brow centers open and bring us into what the Tibetans call the golden age, an enlightened society. When the brow centers open, it means that we can see beyond duality. We're not going to keep going into this judgment of light and dark. We have the compassion to include everything with love, but have the discernment to know where to put our energy in every moment. But to come back to this, Kundalini, the Great Mother, can't pass through the membranes of each of there's a sheath between the chakras. And just for those of you that don't know exactly what a chakra is, let me just put it like this. Your chakras are what you bring in with you from your previous life. All the merit stored from each life is accumulated and stored in your chakras. They are lenses to look through. They are gateways that open you into different dimensions. They're either radiant or they're sucking energy or they're dormant. So the awakening comes when your chakras are now ready to open. So when the Ida and the Pingala crosses over each chakra, it's absolutely an activation, awakening, opening the lens so that you can go through that gate, through yourself. So imagine your solar plexus is aligned to the astral plane. There's the, you know, your sacral chakra is connected to the 4 planes of ether, the etheric field. And in the etheric field is the perfection of the 5th kingdom of heaven that's already here and parallel to us, but it's invisible to most people until the brow centers open. When the brow centers open, all of a sudden the mist will be lifted and we're going to see the most sacred palatial exquisiteness that's already existing here within the etheric field of humanity and on this earth, which is when, like in the Lord's Prayer, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come and thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Getting to this 3rd initiation and for the Kundalini to rise means that you as a left brain person ego is now ready to give your personal free will to be at one with the will of the one, the will of the creator, to say, okay, creator spirit, I realize I don't have a clue what to do. I always mess up. Please guide me into the right activity within the divine plan each day in every way, with every word that comes out of my mouth all the time. Please purify me so that I am a vessel of your light, love, and wisdom to shine through me. Please show me what to do, where to go. And it's walking with that degree of respect and giving yourself to this light, which means that we have to be naked to come back like innocent, like a child, to recognize that this beautiful creator, you know, it's like the prodigal son returning. If you think about it, like, you know, the whole Bible story of Lucifer was like this beautiful great angel in heaven that says, I don't want to be part of your will. I want my own creativity. I don't want your influence. I know that I can do it all myself. Talk to the hand god. Every single human being has been implanted with this same energy of impotence that doesn't really want to be told what to do by anything ever, to follow an instruction. And so coming home to have this Kundalini rising is when you sincerely, with all that you are giving yourself to the will of the one to say, please guide me. Internally, not with some guru telling you. You know, I know that I wrap my head. That's because I have such a lot of Kundalini activation all the time and it holds it steady. But I'm definitely not a guru. And I'm definitely don't want followers. I'm here to hold containers to help people come down and in and make their own unraveling to inspire to come back to connect with the source of all life.
Well, I'll give you another one, and it's Doctor Who.
Oh, I love Doctor Who.
And Doctor Who has had it right since 1966 when they did the first regeneration of William Hartnell into Patrick Troughton, because the whole point about these past lives are they are like the incarnations of the Doctor. So each time you come back as a different, literally as a different person, because you are. But inside, you're not. You're still the same person you were before, but you are older. So it's like you just said about me going back and talking to my past self. That's a little bit like the 15th Doctor going to talk to the 12th Doctor. Yeah. So the 12th Doctor is younger than so in a way, I would quite like to have all the different versions of me in the, like sometimes happens in the Doctors, because you get the 3 Doctors or the 5 Doctors. And I always think that would be quite good fun for me to talk to, say, the young woman who was alive in the First World War, which is an earlier version of me. And it's like, she's me, but not, because I've had extra experience, which she hasn't had. So I would love to go and talk to her and give her the benefit of the experiences that I've had. It would be interesting.
Wow, amazing. So I think it's really fascinating, the past life. So is any advisement you can give people that are listening to this podcast today regarding an interest in their past life? Because in my opinion, that it should be a very natural, organic process. You recall the remembrance, the synchronicity unravels at that right point for people. I think curiosity is also a quality I think we as humans need to tap into a little bit more.
Agreed.
That curious. But what advisement, through your experience, sometimes there is that fear of over-attachment. The past life.
That's one thing I would say people mustn't do, and that is get over-attached. Because realize, I mean, quite often I mean, I know in my case, I find that at least 2 of my lifetimes have been quite well-known people, but the other lives haven't been well-known people at all. Just, I mean, one life I had in the 17th century was a lifetime as a captain in the in Charles I's army in the Civil War, but nobody knows who he was now. Do you understand what I mean? I'm just aware that I was a captain in his army during the Civil War, and while it's fascinating sometimes, if you find that you had an incarnation of a person that was well-known or reasonably well-known to history, there is a temptation in that to get attached to that person because of the glamour of it, right? You mustn't do that, because every life has its worth. No matter whether it's a person digging fields or a duke, it doesn't matter. You're still you. It doesn't matter whether you're the duke in the castle with loads of servants or whether you're the dude in the fields digging the trenches. You're still you. And It's the learning that's the most important thing, not the glamour of who you have been. That's pointless. The only point there is to it, and I've thought about this with respect to the 2 lives I do know. The point about it is to get to the bottom of what those lives were about. And that's beyond the glamour. And this is what you're saying about being curious.
Yeah, that's outdated now. That mentality that we have to fight for freedom through resistance and defend our right for freedom. There is a place for that if we're being threatened directly, of course. The self-defense, and under natural law, the right to self-defense is sacrament, But I think that approach isn't going to work anymore, because resistance just creates more conflict, and we just keep looping in these same cycles.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter, like I said, which side you're on. It's all feeding into the polarized divide and conquer strategy, where there's always a winner and a loser. So you might believe you're on the righteous side of history, but we have to look at it more energetically now, and not based on the illusion that we're witnessing on surface appearances. And there is this resistance mounting, and understandably people are frustrated and angry discovering the truth at this time, especially since COVID, because there's so many ramifications of what's happened since in the last few years. So there's a place for an expression of righteous anger on the pathway to conserving emotional energy, and we shouldn't deny anyone that experience, of course, and we've all gone through that in our own way, and we still do get triggered every now and then, and I do as well, but I try and catch that in its tracks now before I project that energy, and because I understand it's much better for myself to be able to conserve my energy and redirect it in creative ways to try and build new structures and energy fields.
So I'm going to go the carnivore diet. I'm going to go on to this meat. How would you advise people to make a start?
Well, it depends on their gut health, really, and their medical history, their level of inflammation. Because you mentioned there that our grandparents ate, they'd have bread and dripping, right? Which is, animal fats. And they'd do that, and they were okay on some bread, and they were okay on the vegetables. They weren't as healthy as they would have been if they'd have been fully carnivore, but they didn't have the issues that we have. A lot of it down to the fact that everything's sprayed with glyphosate now. So every time you buy anything from the supermarket, you're basically taking in a broad spectrum antibiotic that ruins the gut. So it depends how much we've been damaged, how much we can get away with. I mean, there are a lot of people, if you just cut grains and seed oils, they're pretty much fine if they're already pretty in robust health. Eat locally and seasonally. Try not to overdo the grains, cut them out if you can, and things go really well. You see, people say, oh, you're very extreme and dogmatic. A carnivore diet is extreme. It's not extreme, it's just basic. Beef and lamb, really, fatty beef and lamb are the only things that we can get now that give us everything we need and nothing we don't. There's no deficiency you'll get. And if you're worried, then a little bit of liver, about a pound of liver a week. That's your vitamin pill. Don't overdo it. You can get hypervitaminosis. Some carnivores have got into trouble with that. If you just take away the really worst things, depending on your state of health. See, the first heart attack was recorded was something like 1913 in America. And when was that? That was when the seed oils were coming in, when they were starting off with the Crisco and stuff. Before that, people didn't get heart attacks. It was incredibly rare. Yeah. You see sort of death statistics from the 1800s, and you can see people are dying of infectious things, consumption and all that kind of thing. But heart attacks, no. Cancer, no. Very, very rare.
When we're going through that journey, and I know you do a lot of that work with people one-to-one. So how can that sort of play out for us, particularly in partnerships as well? People see that a lot in the relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's definitely something to be said with people rush into relationship way too soon. And it would be great if they, like, once you finish university or when you're at university, you have like, you know, spiritual training on how to deal with your triggers and everything, because then you might not attract a partner that you're going to divorce 5 years down the line. Because when you haven't done the healing, you are going to attract a person that's going to mirror your deepest wounds. That's the whole point of this experience. And so that's going to be really challenging and it's going to be really difficult. So, you know, once you've done the healing, once you've done the work on yourself, you then attract a partner that's at a higher state of consciousness and you're going to be vibing in a much nicer and so I think, you know, when it comes to relationships, it's always looking at like, what are your triggers? How are you being triggered by this person? What are they evoking within you? You know, are they making you feel unseen? Are they making you feel rejected? Are they making you feel jealous? Are they making you feel all of these different things? Because they're all just beautiful indicators of what's needs to be healed from your inner child's perspective or ancestral or past lives, usually mainly inner child, but then there's obviously some residue from other places as well. And so we can use our relationships, whether that's with a family member, whether that's with a sibling, or whether that's with a romantic partner, as ways of finding deeper understandings of ourselves and how we can heal. Now, a lot of people will automatically put blame on the other person. Yeah, but it's them. They're like this. They're the ones, you know, behaving this way. They're the narcissist. It's like, if there's a narcissist in your life, you called them in. Like, take responsibility. You know, I've never been with a narcissist in my life ever. So why does someone else have that tendency of attracting narcissists? We have to see it from that perspective of like, if it's not in my reality, why is it in your reality? Because there's something in your frequency that's calling it in. And you have to take notice of that and you have to take responsibility. It's taking radical responsibility of your life, and your relationships are your best mirror to show you where you need to take responsibility.
I think that we should also be curious with like people that are who we're in relationships with and like dynamics.
Yeah.
Because we can always, especially people that we're close to, we can get engaged in these patterns.
Yeah.
We can automatically react to ways that we're perceiving that person to be because we take it personally. I think that curiosity can be a way to like not take things personally. You know, if someone says something to you that maybe like triggers you, rather than reacting, just be like curious. Like, I think that that's a really good way to diffuse a pattern and to like overcome it, is to just take a step back and just be curious. Like, why is this person acting like this? Why is this person saying it? Because it's never, if someone's reacted towards you, it's never about you. It's about them. It's how you react about you. But if you can stop your reaction, just remain curious to what that other person is going through, then it can help you to better understand that person. And that'd be
so true.
Because a lot of the time, dynamics, the other person's projecting that you don't understand me.
Yeah.
And then if you react, then it confirms that belief that they're not being understood.
There's a saying, isn't there? It's be curious, not judgmental.
It prevents judgment. I think curiosity is like the remedy for judgment.
Agree, yeah.
I just want to say a little bit of advice for anyone that's like been listening to this and they're wondering what they can do to help with this collective awakening that's taking place, would be to keep observing your patterns. I think that we've covered the things about try not to expect too much from people, try not to react to situations, and to not identify too much with belief systems, because there is going to be a whole new wave of belief systems that have come up to the surface. I think it can help you to stay grounded, to not attach yourself to these different belief systems, because I think that a lot of belief systems are going to come and go. But for the next couple of years, I think that there's going to be bubbles that are going to be popped all over the place. So if you're in a bubble right now, then hold on tight, because I think that, illusions are going to be getting burst all over the place, which is ultimately a good thing. But it can be bumpy if you've got a strong attachment to some kind of belief system. And to try not to reach out for validation from anybody outside of yourself, and to recognize that you have everything that you need inside of you. You don't need anything from anyone else, and no one is coming to save you. You can save yourself.
Something I sometimes do in lectures, I get up and announce to the audience, as I'm putting on these really big boots, I'm going to do a miracle that is all of you can do. In fact, all of you are doing it all the time. You just don't know it. So I'm going to show you this wonderful miracle. I'm going to transcend the mind with my mind. And so I stand up. I got bootstraps. I bend down. I'm going to levitate off this stage right now before you all. And I grab the boots and I'm going, I'm trying to pull myself up off the ground in my boots that I'm pulling up. You can't do it. That's it. That is what mindfulness is. Because mindfulness, unfortunately, English and even French, it's even more poor with it. The meditation is a very cheap, poor word for it. The word is dhyana in Sanskrit. Dhyana means literally just to witness, to see. And not to contemplate, not to meditate on. It's about watching that person thinking it's contemplation and saying and watching that person saying meditate on. It's kind of like stepping deeper and clearer into this moment. It takes you to this moment because it's always here in this moment. I didn't waste any time at all in those 25 centuries. I just missed the point, the no pointness of it. I just missed that you are always a Buddha. You can't be otherwise. And it is so ubiquitous, so ordinary, that what you encounter in the process is all the ways in which, and they get subtler and subtler, that the mind is still trying to control, still trying to reach for that. Where's that boot? Where's that boot so I can pull myself off the stage into the air? And it just gets subtler and subtler. But you're really coming home to where you've never left. And it'll even get to the point where, people are listening to that as an intellectual construct. You'll have to watch that. Because the part cannot express the whole, it can hint. That's why so many great masters talk so much. They know full well that every utterance is a step away from the truth. There was this whole argument that Buddha had after he became enlightened, where all these gods and goddesses from a higher plane came down all around him after he was silent and still for 7 days and nights. And they said they had this dialogue without dialogue, where they said to him, they tried to convince him that he should teach. And his point of view is, what I found everybody is. So eventually, it doesn't really matter about time. You can never be too soon or too late to this understanding, because it's where you innerly stand.